Well, hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of Coffee with Stephen. For those of you who are more professionally attuned, trained observers, you may have noticed that I'm using a different coffee cup for this particular issue of Coffee with Stephen. I'd like to give a shout out to my esteemed colleague in the law offices of Lieberman and Taormina, Cosmo Taormina, for giving me this outstanding coffee cup on the anniversary of Veterans Day for this year. Thank you, Major. I appreciate it. In any event, let's get on to this week's blog. So accompanying this newsletter where you see this video, there's my blog, and this particular blog has to do with the generational defense of freedom. Ronald Reagan so famously stated that freedom and liberty is really only a generation away from extinction, and many of us are constantly concerned that the next generation of Americans have less of an interest in, essentially protecting the types of freedoms that we enjoy. This was one of those times where I actually got to relax a little bit, for lack of a better term. My daughter, Cheney, many of you are familiar with Cheney's work. She's 16 years old. She goes to the Orange County School of Performing Arts, and she's a member of an organization called JSA, which stands for Junior Statesman Association. And it's kind of like the equivalent of a debating club and Model UN kind of mashed together. It's a very large national institution. And every few months, it seems, they get together and they have these state conferences where they have all sorts of debates and things like that. What's interesting is that their political views are fairly robust, and they're, to the most part, fairly well thought out. And they vary. There's no consistency. Some of them are extraordinarily towards the left, flat out devout communists, all the way to extremely committed conservatives and libertarians and radical syndicalists and everything else. In any event, she was arguing this preceding weekend on gun control, actually on whether or not teachers with concealed carry permits should be allowed to carry their guns in the classroom. As you probably know from having talked to Cheney, she's wholly in favor of this proposition. There were some fairly large luminaries that were at this conference as well. Dr. John Lott, many of you are familiar with his work, The Economist, who wrote the seminal book, More Guns, Less Crime, was there to argue as well as to answer questions, and Cheney got to meet with him. And her powers of persuasion were apparently quite good because she was able to earn the infamous speaker's gavel, showing that she prevailed in her argumentation. So, very good, Cheney. We are, both Sandy and I, very, very proud of you, as well as I'm sure many of our listeners as well. In any event, the reason that I wrote about it wasn't so much to brag about Cheney, although, I'll be candid, that was part of it. But the fact that there is this secondary generation, people that are growing up, people that are honing their skills and understanding liberty, understanding the concept of freedom, understanding the philosophical underpinnings, and are learning the skills necessary to persuade others that this is something that needs to be defended and needs to be preserved. This is one of those glimmers of light where we can look and we can say that the future of America is not as dire as some of us necessarily think it is. So anyways, that all being said, I hope you enjoy the blog. Forgive me for my indulgence of writing about my own daughter, but I hope you like it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me by email at stephen@artemishq.com. And as always, train constantly, train consistently, and train with purpose. Thank you, and until next week, stay safe.